I'm a 32-year-old man who considers himself pretty easygoing, but everyone has their breaking point, right? I have a stable job, pay my bills on time, and generally keep to myself. For the past 2 years, I've been in a relationship with my girlfriend. Let's call her G. Things between us weren't perfect, but they were good enough that I started imagining a future together. A few months ago, G began talking about wanting a real vacation. Not just a quick road trip, but a proper getaway. Cancun sounded like the perfect destination, sun, beaches, and a chance to relax. It seemed like exactly what we needed. We flew out on a Friday morning, and G seemed unusually cheerful, almost giddy. At the time, I chalked it up to the excitement of the trip. Looking back, there were subtle warning signs I ignored. For instance, she was glued to her phone during the entire flight. Every time I glanced over, she tilted the screen away. I joked, "What's so important that you can't unplug for a few hours?" She dismissed it, saying it was just work stuff. By the time we landed, I had convinced myself I was overthinking. The first 2 days went well enough. We lounged by the pool, tried out local restaurants, and took silly pictures like any normal couple on vacation. But on the third day, things started feeling off. G kept stepping away to take work calls, which felt odd for someone who had insisted on unplugging and relaxing. That afternoon, she said, "I'm going to check out some shops down the street. Wanna come?" I was stretched out on a lounge chair, cocktail in hand and feeling lazy. "Nah, I'm good. Bring me back something fun," I replied. She smiled, but it wasn't her usual warm smile. It felt forced, almost relieved. After she left, something about her behavior didn't sit right with me. I'm not usually the suspicious type, but this time, I decided to follow her. I waited about 10 minutes before heading toward the shops. It didn't take long to find her. She was at a coffee shop, but she wasn't alone. Across from her sat a man I recognized instantly. Her ex. They were laughing like they had just shared a private joke. Let me pause here and explain. G had a complicated history with this guy. They had an on and off relationship for years before we met, but she had sworn to me it was over. She even showed me texts where she told him to leave her alone. Seeing them together now felt like a punch in the gut. I didn't want to confront her right there and then. I wasn't ready for a scene. Instead, I hung back and discreetly snapped a few photos with my phone for proof. My heart was racing, but I forced myself to stay calm. I followed them at a distance as they left the coffee shop and walked to a nearby park. They looked far too comfortable together. At one point, she even hugged him before they parted ways. When she returned to the hotel, she was all smiles. The shops were great. "I got you this," she said, handing me a cheesy souvenir keychain. "Thanks," I replied, forcing a smile. "Looks like you had fun." "Yeah, it was nice to get out for a bit," she said casually, without a hint of guilt. That night, while she was in the shower, I did something I never thought I'd do. I went through her phone. I know it's not ideal, but I needed answers. What I found confirmed my worst fears. Their messages revealed they had planned this for weeks. This trip wasn't just a romantic getaway for us. It was a cover for her to meet him. She told him she missed him, still thought about him, and needed closure. Closure? Seriously? I barely slept that night, but by morning, I had a plan. The next day, I acted like everything was fine. We went snorkeling, had lunch, and even walked on the beach at sunset. But the whole time, I was mentally preparing for what I needed to do. That evening, I told her I wasn't feeling well and wanted to stay in. She seemed a little disappointed, but didn't argue. "I might head out for a bit," she said casually. "Sure," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. As soon as she left, I sprang into action. I packed my bags, called the airline, and booked the next flight home. Then I went to the front desk and canceled our hotel room, citing an emergency. By the time she returned around midnight, I was gone. I left her a note. "Gee, I know about your little reunion with X's name. Hope it was worth it. The room is canceled, and I'm on a flight back home. Good luck sorting this out. Was it harsh? Maybe. But she deserved it. On the flight home, I couldn't stop thinking about how blind I had been. I replayed the past 2 years in my mind, recognizing all the warning signs I had overlooked. The cryptic text messages, the weak excuses, and her constant dismissal of her past with her ex. I felt foolish for not realizing the truth sooner. But above all, I felt a profound sense of relief. Once I landed back home, I severed all connections. I blocked her on every platform: phone, social media, email. I didn't want to hear her justifications. A few days later, mutual friends started reaching out, informing me that G had been calling them, sobbing, and claiming I had abandoned her in Mexico. Did she tell you why? I asked one of them. She just said you freaked out and left, they replied. I shared the screenshots and photos with them, which quickly silenced their defenses. The fallout for G was swift and harsh. She had to book an expensive last-minute flight home. Her ex completely ghosted her when she explained the situation, and as the truth spread, her friends began distancing themselves. As for me, I was thriving better than I had in years. Ending that toxic relationship was the smartest decision I ever made. If there's a lesson here, it's to trust your instincts and never let anyone take advantage of your kindness. But G wasn't the type to let things end quietly. About a week after I got back, I received an email from an unfamiliar address. It didn't take long to realize it was her. The email was chaotic. A jumble of insincere apologies, flimsy justifications, and outright fabrications. She claimed meeting her ex was a spur-of-the-moment decision and insisted it was all a misunderstanding. She begged me to talk to her, swearing I had misinterpreted everything. Misunderstood? I had photos and text messages. What was there to misinterpret? I deleted her email without responding. A couple of days later, one of her friends called me, a person I had always been on good terms with. You really hurt her, they said. Hurt hers. I replied incredulously. Do you even know what she did? She told me she met her ex, but it wasn't what you think. She just wanted to clear the air. Clear the air? I asked, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Because sneaking around and hugging him screams honesty, right? I forwarded them the same screenshots I had shown others. That ended the conversation quickly. For a while, I thought that was the last I'd hear of it. But G wasn't done. She started spinning a new narrative where I was a villain. According to her, I was controlling, paranoid, and had ruined the trip because I couldn't handle her being friends with her ex. She even accused me of stealing her belongings when I left, an absurd claim, considering I barely had time to pack my own things. Her lies spread to social media, where she painted herself as a victim of my so-called jealous rage. I didn't care about her falsehoods, but I underestimated how far she was willing to go. One morning, I woke up to a text from my boss asking me to call him immediately. What's going on? I asked. We received an email from someone claiming you've been acting erratically and might pose a danger to the team, he said. It included screenshots of texts where you supposedly admitted to being unstable. It felt like a punch to the gut. None of that's true, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. We figured, he reassured me, but HR needs you to come in and address it. When I saw the email, my stomach dropped. G had fabricated screenshots to make it appear as though I had been ranting and making threats. The forgeries were riddled with typos and strange formatting, but they were still unsettling. Fortunately, my boss and HR dismissed the claims as a hoax, but the damage to my reputation was undeniable. That was a final straw. If G wanted to fight, she had chosen the wrong person. I consulted a lawyer and presented everything. Her lies, the fake screenshots, and her attempt to jeopardize my career. The lawyer recommended sending her a cease and desist letter, which I promptly did. The letter was direct and detailed her actions, warning her that any further harassment would lead to legal action. To emphasize its seriousness, I had it delivered by a process server. Her response was exactly what I expected. A barrage of texts from a new number, filled with all caps rants accusing me of overreacting and ruining her life. "You're doing that yourself," I replied before blocking her again. Then I got strategic. G had always been careless about oversharing on social media. It didn't take long for me to find posts and comments exposing her true nature, boasting about deceiving people, flaking on commitments, and even hinting at sabotaging other relationships. I saved everything, not to use immediately, but as a precaution in case she escalated further. And escalate she did, when she realized the legal threat was serious. She tried turning more of our mutual friends against me, claiming the C. Sanders' letter was an attempt to silence her. But most of our friends were already on my side, having seen the evidence. The backlash hit her hard. People confronted her publicly, questioning her lies about the trip, the text, and me. Some unfollowed her online, while others cut ties completely. The final blow came from her ex, who had no idea she was in a relationship when they met in Cancun. After finding out, he posted a scathing rant online, calling her a manipulative liar and warning others to stay away from her. By the time the dust settled, G's reputation was in shambles. She deleted all her social media accounts and disappeared. I heard through the grapevine that she had moved to another city, but by then, I had stopped caring. Revenge isn't always the answer, but in this case, it felt justified. She tried to destroy my life, and all I did was reveal the truth. Looking back, I'm grateful for the experience. It taught me to trust my instincts and never settle for someone who doesn't respect me.